In less than 24 hours, the Clemson Tigers will begin their drive to the championship. A huge story for the thousands of Clemson fans out there. So I'm going to turn it over to the News 2 sports team for our pregame coverage of the Orange Bowl.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. The Clemson Tigers have been holding on to the #1 spot for the past 6 weeks. Tomorrow, they will put that #1 record in 13-0 on the line against Bob Stoops' Oklahoma Sooners. Practice has been full tilt since the beginning of the week, and it comes down to their drive to the national championship kickoff. It's at 4 o'clock in Miami, Florida. News 2, Evan West and photojournalist Dan Fanning, they're in Miami right now. And Evan, this has been the final day just before the big game, but we're hearing confirmation that there will be without 3 players. Am I hearing that right?
That's right, Brandon. Yeah, the final day of media for both coaches, and after an hour-long media session yesterday, there shouldn't have been much to talk about that, but that was not the case for Dabo Swinney. Not after suspending 3 players yesterday for a violation of team rules.
When you have 115 guys, you're going to have young people, you're going to have some discipline from time to time. It's just part of it. But at the end of the day, there's consequences for your actions.
The 2015 season is over for Deon Cain, Ammon LaKip, and J.J. McCullough. Cain entered the Orange Bowl as Clemson's second leading receiver despite coming off the bench. The freshman has found the end zone 5 times in 5 straight games this year. LaKip lost his job as starting kicker, and McCullough didn't record a catch this season.
It doesn't matter who they are or how big the game is. If you don't do what's right, you ain't playing.
Dabo Swinney had to send 3 players home for disciplinary action yesterday. Have you had any players have any disciplinary problems since you guys have been here in South Florida?
We have not.
In his press conference, Dabo declared that it's business as usual for players, saying the only person distracted by the suspension was himself, all because he had to address it with the media. Besides that, he says the Tigers have their stripes and they are ready to play.
Our focus has really been 100% on trying to win this game. And we've prepared exactly the same as we have in our past bowls.
The biggest effect the suspensions have on this team is on the depth chart. While all 3 players were not regular starters, Deon Cain and Sharon Peak split reps at receiver.
It helps that we got a big roster and we have a lot of good players. Last time we were down here playing in the stadium, Deon Cain wasn't with us either. So, you know, it just helps that we recruit well and we got a lot of good players.
Dabo also said that if the Tigers win tomorrow and advance to the national championship game, then they will be without these 3 guys. They will not be allowed to rejoin the team until 2016. Now, it's a rocky story and an otherwise smooth season for Clemson. I caught up with the Post-Courier's beat writer for the Clemson Tigers, Aaron Brenner, earlier today to get his take on the suspensions and the Tigers season. Here with Aaron Brenner, the Clemson beat guy for the Charleston Post and Courier. First off, Aaron, just the big topic today, the 3 suspensions, the most notable name, freshman wide receiver Deon Cain. What kind of loss does this mean for the team?
Yeah, I mean, Cain was a revelation since losing Mike Williams on the first drive of the season, just in terms of opening the field for Deshaun Watson. And now at this point, like Dabo Swinney told us today, it's going to be all Sharon Peak. He is the starter, and Peak is the healthiest he's been in a number of years. He just has been able to stay fresh because Cain has been able to spell him. So now you're going to see more Trevion Thompson, who made, I think, the biggest catch of the entire season in that South Carolina victory. So Cain's a big loss. I also think Ammon LaKip, who'd been handling kickoffs for almost the entire year. Now Greg Hugel is back on those duties. Hugel's missed 5 extra points this year, so very interesting to see in one day's time how this affects the Tigers.
And you go back to last year's game, which I know Dabo doesn't want to do, but they really pulled ahead with the long passes and stuff. Do you think this really might change the approach for Dabo?
Well, I think back to last year, the very first play was Cole Stout, a screen pass over to Artavis Scott, and Artavis went the distance, 65 yards. I think you're going to see a lot more Scott and Ray McLeod, both those guys looking very healthy, coming off knee injuries in November. And I just think that Clemson and Oklahoma, they mirror each other in a lot of different ways, whereas Watson was kind of put on this earth to play big games. Baker Mayfield, a little bit of the wild card. He's got a little Johnny Manziel in him, and prone to the big play, very difficult to bring him down. You know, I think the Tigers will be able to get after Mayfield. It's just, can they bring him down, and can the Tigers defense get off the field on 3rd down?
We saw them play a great third quarter against North Carolina, kind of let up there, but do you think this team's footballs or best football is ahead of them?
They better hope so, because Oklahoma's going to be the best team they've seen, but I would say the same is true for the Sooners. So whichever team is able to bottle up that momentum from late in the year. I mean, yes, we've talked a lot about the Texas loss, but that was so long ago. And, of course, Clemson hasn't lost all year. You talk about the lapses, especially on defense in the second half. This team has had 3-4 weeks to really rest up. The defenders feel much fresher, and so at the end of the day, it's just going to be, I think, who gets a really good start. That was really the catalyst for Clemson's 34-point win last year. The Sooners are going to want to start a lot better.
Thanks a lot, Aaron Brenner with the Post-Courier. Appreciate it. Should be a very entertaining game. And speaking of entertainment, here in the corner of Biscayne Bay, I've got a couple of Chihuahuas jumping in the water. It's quite a sight to see. They just jumped in. I thought I was going to get them for y'all on live TV, but maybe they'll come back and jump in later. For now, though, I'll send it back to the studio in Charleston.
All right, thank you, Evan. You just stay out of that water. Now, thousands of Clemson fans have taken to the air and ground nearly 800 miles and about 11 hours away to witness the sights and sounds of the Orange Bowl. Head coach Dabo Swinney hasn't focused on the crowd that will possibly be there, but he believes there will be a Clemson presence.
We haven't talked about that, but I expect we'll have a great crowd. I'd be shocked if we don't. Wherever we go, we have a great crowd. So our guys know that. But no, we hadn't spent any time talking about the crowd. I mean, that doesn't really matter. I mean, we spend all of our time on talking about how we play, and that's it.
Focus. Fans will definitely be ready to pack the Sun Life Stadium, which, by the way, seats up to 75,000. We'll have to see if Clemson will be able to paint it red or orange. When it comes to Clemson's opponents, the Oklahoma Sooners' resume is stacked. Speaks volumes since Bob Stoops has been in the fold. They've won the Big 12 title 9 out of his 17 years with the program, and no other team has been to the Orange Bowl more than Oklahoma. Our sports photojournalist Dan Fanning takes a look at Oklahoma.
After Clemson's blowout win over Oklahoma last year, Bob Stoops, or Big Game Bob, questioned his players' accountability. The standards also coming into question in Norman.
You have some bad breaks, you get a few things don't go your way, and you have, you go 8-5, and that isn't our standards. And listen, I'm the one who set the standards.
Last year's 34-point loss in the Russell Athletic Bowl was Bob Stoops' worst bowl loss since 2005. When Southern Cal embarrassed OU in the Orange Bowl. The Sooners, 11-1 on the season, have used a loss earlier this year against rival Texas to turn their season around.
That may have been a wake-up call that they needed, that there's more to this, and they've been able to, to give that extra now to get themselves in that position.
Even though Oklahoma is the lower seed against the top-ranked Tigers, they are favored again this year.
Don't really care about that. I think we were favored last year, and obviously those people didn't see last year's game.
Trying to avoid last year's loss in Orlando, Oklahoma has played well down the stretch and looks to continue their role in Miami.
I'm kind of glad, we're all the way down here. I think, we've really been the most focused and played maybe the best when we've been on the road.
Now Oklahoma has had success in Miami before, winning the 2000 Orange Bowl and eventual national championship. They'll have to get past the #1 Clemson Tigers tomorrow to reach another national title game. In Miami, Dan Fanning, News 2 Sports.
All right, thank you, Dan. News 2, Evan West has been with the team for the past 2 days. He's live in South Beach with more. Now, Evan, we all know what happened last year. These two teams met. Clemson took care of business in a big way, but has either team mentioned this about last year, and if so, will Oklahoma use this as motivation moving forward?
Well, I think there's no doubt they're using it as motivation, but they won't admit that much to the media. They have 9 of 11 starters back on defense, so that's motivation enough. But they didn't play against Deshaun Watson. So you're playing against a lot of different guys who you aren't as familiar with. So in that regard, I don't think, they use it as motivation. And I definitely don't think the coaches are playing that up as motivation. At least they won't admit that to the media, Brandon.
And Evan, Deshaun Watson, he racked up on accolades, of course, in the offseason. And then also he's fresh off a trip, finished third in the Heisman race. For him, what's the vibe around him? And then also losing his number 2 target in Deon Cain.
Well, Dabo said today Deshaun is calm as ever. That's his demeanor. It's been his demeanor throughout the entire season. And after hearing the news yesterday, he went to practice and started throwing more footballs to Sharon. So that's how Dabo says that Deshaun is handling it, and we could expect that because as you've seen from the quarterback, he's been calm, cool, collected, and he doesn't let many people know what he's thinking.
All right, Evan, thank you so much.
Coming up on News 2 at 5.
I was walking down the hall, first day of band, and saw a student there who looked older than usual. And I kind of cocked my head a little bit and I said, I wonder if that's a parent or a student.
The upstate woman who didn't want to just sit in the stands to watch Clemson Tigers anymore. We have her inspiring story coming up next.